of my podcast. This is the 50th episode of Curious Vedanth, and I am very excited to present this special episode. A lot of listeners reached out with follow-up questions for Jayasimha, whom I interviewed last week, and we will be asking those questions in this episode. Also, Divya, my mother, and the first guest on my show, will be joining me in hosting this episode. We will also be talking about my learnings and experiences hosting this podcast for 50 weeks. Hi Jayasimha and Divya. Welcome to my show.
Hi Vedant, it's really fun to be back on your podcast.
Hi Vedant, thank you for having me again. I was the first guest of yours and I'm so excited to be here with you on the other side for your 50th episode. Congratulations for doing this for 50 weeks straight and looking forward to continuing this for a long time.
Yeah, Vedant, huge congratulations for doing this podcast for 50 weeks, and I'm sure your listeners will join in for a round of applause for this milestone on the number of podcasts.
Thank you so much. Even I feel very happy, and I feel very great that I've done 50 episodes continuously. And it's for me, it also feels like a big and great achievement. And I'm also glad to have you both back on my show too.
Thank you. We are really glad to be back on your show. And it's surely an achievement to have 50 podcasts done every week without missing one.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. So, the first follow-up question will be presented by me. So, in the previous interview with you, Jayasimha, you said that many people had helped you when you were helping animals. Can you please just tell us who are the people who guided you and helped you during this whole process?
Yeah, Vedant, as in a lot of people, a lot of guides and mentors who helped me. And I can take, obviously, if I take everybody's name, it's going to be a long list. But I'll probably take a few key people who were really instrumental. When I joined People for Animals, I was inspired by Srimati Menka Gandhiji, and her guidance and her mentoring played a very, very important role, not just to me, but I'm sure for almost every single animal welfare advocate in India. The trustees at People for Animals, Bangalore, Alpana, Arushi, Namrata and Gauri, they were really instrumental in just shaping young minds. When I started to do newspaper in education, there were people like Shobha who helped, and also a lot of my other friends during that time. Sumant, whom you know, who does wildlife rescue, Achala, Rohini, Soumya, who is now a member of Legislative Assembly in Jayanagar. All of them really helped me shape my thoughts. But I'd say if one person who's had a huge impact in my life is Anuradha Sahani, and she's now in Pune, and she was one of the founders as well as the chief functionary for PETA India for many years. And she had a huge influence in just molding my thoughts and training me for doing a lot of work. After that, a lot of my colleagues at PETA, Jalaj, Monish, Sachin, Nikunj, Simran, Pooja, just to name a few, and they were really helpful, who helped. Later on, when I moved to Humane Society International, Orko, who used to be my colleague at PETA, who came along, and then a lot of my colleagues at Humane Society International, Alok Parna, Shreya, each of these people were really helpful and they guided me through this. And in my previous episode, I spoke about Chetana and others as well. So these are just maybe few people, but there were a lot of them. And also there were other people whom I really look up to, for example, Ingrid Newkirk, who was the founder of PETA, with whom I did some work, and also some really influential writers like Peter Singer, who gave that philosophy and reading their philosophy. And my current colleagues at Global Food Partners, so it could be Lissy, Sabina, Dawn, Kate, Michelle, Lisa, Bailey, a whole lot of people. In fact, these are just like a handful of names that I'm taking. And if there's anybody who also taught me as to how the government works, is Gauri Molekhi, and she's the trustee of People for Animals, as well as we both together run People for Animals Public Policy Foundation. So she as well, and again, these are just a few people who directly help me. And when I moved on to Harvard to do my fellowship at Harvard, the director of the Harvard Animal Law and Policy Programs, this could be Kristen and Chris Green, Sarah, Kelly, and also my co-fellows that you know, like Charlotte, Hadar, Jim Keen, and so many other people like molded my thoughts. So as I said, a human being, Vedant, is not just what they are made as, and it's just the contributions and learning from so many people who touch your life in different points, who make them. And this is just a small list of an umpteen number of people who helped. And on the family side, as in, if it wasn't for Divya, who is here, who helped through this entire journey, because when you were a baby, I used to be gone all the time. I used to be traveling all the time, but you never complained. You kind of were always happy when I went. You would come back and say, what did you do for animals? And, just telling those stories would make me so happy. Both your side's grandparents and your great-grandparents, as in literally the entire family, who's been such a great pillar of support. I think all of these people and many more are the ones who help me help animals.
Jayasimha, those are some really amazing people. Like, I know all of them. And listeners, for Jayasimha's part 1 episode, remember the part where I said I'm going to join PFA? Well, so successful. I have joined PFA. So, hello to all the people in PFA.
Okay, I'm sure PFA will be really happy to have you as a member.
Yeah, I know. So next, you have done lots of great work for animals. And what is the most important things that you have done to save them?
Thank you, Vedant. In fact, as I said, it's not just me, it's collectively the animal welfare community who has done a lot. But I think I've been involved in few very important milestones. One was trying to get a ban on cosmetic testing on animals, which we spoke about in our last podcast, and also getting a ban on import of cosmetics tested on animals into India. I was also instrumental in being part of a team that tried to stop one of the largest animal sacrifices that happens in Nepal. Also part of many legal cases that protected animals in markets, slaughterhouses, in pet shops, as well as other things. And also just to increase the share of cage-free egg production in India. As in, when we started Vedant, there was just one cage-free egg producer in India. Now there are just so many of them. In fact, now there is a court order that said that no new battery cages can be established in India as well. So I think these are just few of the important work that I have been involved in through my career.
Are there any important things you have done on your own?
Right.
Like for animals?
It's very hard to do just something by yourself, Vedant, and it's always a teamwork. And I have played a role in some of these things. Maybe in some that I played more role, in some lesser role. And I think that the few things that I'm very proud of the work that I have done is just setting up legal capacity building, that is like teaching animal law in different places. So, just working with Nalsar, University of Law, National Law School of India, also coordinating with and I've conducted a lot of training programs for judges, prosecutors, police and others on animal welfare laws and a lot of training myself. So I think that's something that I'm very, very proud of. But again, no progress ever happens because of one person. Any progress is like running a relay running race. So what happens is that there are people before us who have run, they give you, and then you take the baton and then you continue to run, and then you give it to somebody who is coming next and they continue to run, right? As in, that's how relay running races are. And any progress in animal welfare is a relay running race. As in, if today there is any progress, it's because of what was worked before.
So the way you said it, maybe when I grow up, I'm going to take the baton from you and then continue all the hard work.
That's a really good thing, Vedant. It would be an honor for me to pass the baton to you.
I know. It will be really fun. So now, listeners, the next set of very complicated questions which I can't understand will be passed over to my mother. She will be asking the questions to my dad.
Okay, thank you, Vedant. Hi, Divya.
Hi, Jayasimha. Thank you, Vedant.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, Jayasimha, after all these years of working to help animals, what is one of the greatest lessons you've learned?
So, the greatest lesson that I learned is that the human being's creativity to do good and the potential to do good is unlimited. When you look at all the suffering that human beings cause, it is very easy to doubt and say, you know what, human beings are a source of all this pain and feel very, very sad about our own species. But the human creativity can actually help a lot of people as well as a lot of species. And things are only getting better in the world.
That's a really positive outlook. Last week, in your interview, you said that you encourage people to explore and figure out their passions. How does one know if they should pursue their passion as a job or just as a hobby?
The most common thing that people say is that, well, you got to follow your passion. And if you ask like most people like what their passion is, they'll be like, oh, well, I want to be a singer. But, there are some professions that it's really, really hard to be a good singer and, actually to make a living out of it. So there is a formula that you can use to find out what to do. The first thing you need to figure out and I think I would ask the listeners to take a sheet of paper and pen to work this with me. First, write down everything that you love to do. Once you've figured that out, see of those things, what are the things that the world really needs. Then you kind of figure out of all the things that you love to do, of all the things that the world needs, what are you really good at? So you filter down to that. Once you identified everything that you're good at, you then figure out what can you be paid for. So when you do that particular filter, you can identify what you have to follow, whether it's your passion and how you take on the job.
That's some really good advice and a very methodical way and probably a very practical way of looking at what one should do in their life. And one thing that I have always believed is that every person has a purpose in their life. And I think maybe following a process like this could make it easier for people to identify that purpose of theirs, increasing the level of satisfaction in their lives.
Yeah, I deserve no credit for coming up with this. This is a Japanese concept for finding reason for being. So what you need to do is you draw out a chart and you find the intersection of what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you are good at. And that tiny small bit that you see in the Venn diagram, when you draw all of those things, the intersection of these four things is what you should be following.
So, moving on, we have one very specific question concerning your current line of area of work. What if a farm or a company does not want to pay more for higher welfare animal products?
It's a misnomer to say that higher welfare products actually cost a little bit more or cost more. It only costs monetarily more because products that are cheap externalize costs. when you have animals raised in poor welfare, what you end up doing is that you externalize the cost. So you might not be paying a little bit more to buy higher welfare products, but you're paying in terms of health, worker safety, biosecurity issues. As a matter of fact, a lot of pandemic ends up causing because of lack of biosecurity and the way we raise animals. So in a lot of sense, I think it is not right to compare and say, well, buying a cage-free egg costs like maybe 20 or 30% more. It is to say that while paying that 20 or 30% more, you're internalizing some of the cost, if not in a battery cage facility, would get externalized to people. And many of the time it gets externalized to people who are poor and marginal. So higher welfare products is just the method of internalizing that particular externalization of cost. And that's the paradigm that we need to be looking at.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And moving on, Vedant, back to you.
You know, Jayasimha, at the start of this episode, you were congratulating me a lot about like how I've already done 50 episodes and that how I've been doing 50 weeks continuously. And the way you've been helping me out, do you plan to start your own podcast?
Vedant, I think you're doing a really good job. I don't plan to start my own podcast, but maybe I can keep coming back as a guest to your podcast. But no plans to start my own podcast as of now. Happy to be a co-host on your podcast, Vedant.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some episodes.
Okay, but if you do ever start a podcast, I have a name for it.
What's the name, Vedant?
Jayasimha's Monologue.
Jayasima's Monologue. That sounds like a really fun name.
Now, moving on to the questions people have asked me.
All right. So, Vedant, what is the greatest learning you've had by running this podcast for 50 long weeks?
So, the greatest learning that I've had is, so when you host a podcast, you need to be fluent. Make it like you're talking to the person in like sitting in a room, drinking some hot chocolate and just sitting and chatting. Make it like that and just basically be chill when you do it. And that's what I've learned.
That's very good advice, to be chill and keep it very fluent. So with that, I have a question. What is the biggest thing you have learned by running a podcast? You've had so many amazing guests on your podcast, from cricketers to aerospace engineers to entrepreneurs. What is that one thing that you learned from all these people on your podcast?
So the thing I've learned is, if you do hard work, you'll be successful.
That's some really good advice, Vedant. You got to do hard work to be successful. And we must say that you're doing some really good hard work putting this podcast together. And we hope that you continue to do this, and we are really sure that you will be successful.
Thank you. Even I'm sure I will be successful.
Yes, Vedant, that's something really valuable that you've learned, and I'm sure you will continue with all the hard work that you've been doing, not just with this podcast, but in everything that you do. So, congratulations once again for completing 50 episodes. And like I said, looking forward to many, many, many more.
So like I asked Jayasimha whether he wants to start a podcast, and he said no. Do you want to?
I am not as good as both of you where talking is concerned, so probably not.
But Divya is going to set up her own art studio. Do you know that this week was really huge because she made a first sale in her art? So dear listeners, if you want some private art commissioned, hit up Divya on her Instagram page.
Thank you.
And she does some really good paintings. So just think, if you want to buy some, just go to her Instagram or Facebook page and just ask her.
We put a link to Divya's Instagram page in the show notes.
Thank you.
Oh, both of you, thank you for coming on my show. And Amma, thank you for co-hosting. And Jayasimha, thank you for coming again.
Thank you so much, Vedant, for inviting us. And thank you, Divya.
Dear listeners, Follow my Facebook page, Curious Vedanth, to get updates on my upcoming episodes. To listen at leisure on your phone and get notified about future episodes, subscribe by searching for Curious Vedanth wherever you get your podcasts, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also listen to my show on CuriousVedanth.com. Thank you for listening to Curious Vedanth, and don't forget to rate and leave comments